What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. It's time for my top 10 sleeper teams for this upcoming 2023 college football season. So we're talking about teams that are not expected to really contend for a playoff spot or maybe their conference championship, or just teams that I think are going to be better than people expect or have potential to be better than people expect. And what I decided to do, I decided to go through each Power 5 conference and pick out two teams. So we're going to go through each conference, and I'll give you the two sleeper teams maybe in that conference race or whatever. So we'll start with the SEC, and this one's a pretty easy pick for me. It's Texas A&M. I think they're one of the biggest sleepers in all of college football. Everyone's talking about Alabama and LSU in the SEC West, and I've got those two teams finishing in the top two spots of that division. So I'm among those people. But I think Texas A&M has the potential to really crash the party there in the SEC West. They get Alabama at home. I did pick them to pull off an upset in that game, but it's just the talent on this team that this is just a loaded roster, and I think they have the talent to compete with the top teams in the SEC. They just got to put it all together. And the Bobby Petrino experiment, how's that going to work? We don't know. I mean, we just don't know until we see this team take the field. It could blow up in Jimbo Fisher's face, and they could be terrible this year, or it could work great, and this could be a team that's in Atlanta at the end of the season. I mean, I really think they have the potential to do that. A lot of weapons on offense. You've got Connor Wigman coming back. You've also got Max Johnson, who I actually am pretty high on. He got injured, of course, last year. I thought they played a lot better with him than they did with Haynes King. But, options at quarterback, up front, offensive, defensive lines, they can compete with anyone in the conference. This is going to be a good team, a talented team, I should say. And if they can put everything together, I think they could really surprise in the SEC West. And then we'll going over to the East and get this team, Kentucky. I think Kentucky could be a surprise team. Now, I do not think that they have a chance to win the division. I'll go ahead and say that. I don't think they have a chance to do that. But I still think they're a sleeper team because I think they could finish. I think they could finish number 2 in that division. I think they could potentially have a 9-3 or 10-2 type season. There are a lot of pieces there. Liam Cohen coming back as their offensive coordinator to work with Devin Leary. I've heard a lot of great things about him there. So, you've got a good quarterback. They've got a trio of wide receivers that are really, really good. They've got Ray Davis, transfer running back, coming over from Vanderbilt. The offensive line will be good. The defense will be good. This is a team that could really surprise this year. And again, I'm not saying they're going to knock off Georgia in that division, but I think they could be pretty close behind them and maybe be a top 15 team this year. And I don't think people are really talking about this Kentucky team in that way. So I think Kentucky, yes, could be a sleeper team for sure in the SEC. Let's go to the Big Ten now, and I think Minnesota is a team that you could put in this category. You got Ethan Kaliak-Manis at quarterback, who did not play a ton last year. Of course, Tanner Morgan did get injured, and you saw him in there. And at times he didn't look great, but at times he did look pretty strong, and he can run the ball. He's a good athlete, very underrated there. They've got weapons at running back and receiver. I was really just kind of looking through their roster. I was really surprised at the talent they've got at wide receiver coming back this year. So this team has a chance to actually be able to throw the football, and they'll be able to run it. I've got some question marks on defense in some certain spots, so that could be something that holds them back. But PJ Fleck will have them ready. I mean, they've really overperformed pretty much every year since he's been there. So I think this is a team that everybody's talking about Wisconsin or maybe Iowa in the Big Ten West. Not a whole lot of people talking about Minnesota. And I think, it wouldn't shock me if they were able to somehow win that division if Wisconsin is not as good as I think they're going to be. Now, I'm really high on Wisconsin, but obviously sometimes we get it wrong. And if Wisconsin is not as good as we think they're going to be, then I think Minnesota could be a team that wins that division. And if it's not Minnesota, I think it could be Illinois. I think Illinois is another sleeper team in this conference. I've said this many times. I felt like this was the best team in the Big Ten West last season. The schedule didn't play out in a way that allowed them to win that division. And I even said that, I picked Purdue to win the West last year because of their schedule. Even though at the end of the year, I did feel like Illinois was the best team. It's going to be a team that's good up front, especially on the defensive line. This team's going to have a really good defensive line. And overall, I think just a really strong defense. And then on offense, they're going to ground and pound. They're going to run the football. They're going to chew the clock. This is going to be a typical Brett Bielema type attack, and it worked against Michigan last year. Remember, they almost pulled off the upset there. I think that there may be a bit of a step back for them in the passing game this year, but maybe that doesn't matter because they're going to want to run it first anyways. So this is a team that I think could be right back in contention in the Big Ten West. And again, going back to what I said on Minnesota, Illinois, they have a chance in the Big Ten West if Wisconsin is not as good as we think they're going to be, because Wisconsin is as good as I think they're going to be with the schedule that they have. I think it's the most favorable schedule in the division. They should win that division, but if they drop the ball, I think Minnesota or Illinois actually going to win that division, and Iowa's definitely there as well. But I don't think they're a sleeper team. I think people are still expecting Iowa to be right there near the top, but maybe not talking about Illinois or Minnesota quite as much. Let's go to the Big 12, and I've said this many times this offseason. If you've been following the channel, I've named the two teams in the Big 12. UCF, one of them. They've got talent. I'm telling you, they've got the talent on this roster to compete with anyone in the Big 12. John Rice Plumlee has got to improve a little bit throwing the ball. Throwing the ball down the field, that's something that's got to improve if they're going to maybe make a run at the Big 12 championship. But they've got a ton of production coming back. They've got a ton of talent, a lot of speed on this roster. This is going to be a dangerous team, and I think people are just completely overlooking them because they're coming from the Group of 5 level. But UCF, watch for them. I think they could surprise. And then the other team is Kansas. Again, I've said this all off season. These are my two sleeper teams in the Big 12. Kansas has a ton of production coming back. They've done a really nice job developing players. Coaching staff, new coaching staff there is doing a fantastic job. Just look at the turnaround last year, making it to a bowl game after being, terrible for so many years. So I think these two teams are sleeper teams in the Big 12. Maybe even Oklahoma State. I think people are counting them out a little bit. And I don't know if you would call them a sleeper, but I think TCU's being underrated a little bit. I think TCU could make a run once again in the Big 12. Everyone's talking about Texas and Oklahoma and Kansas State. That seems to be the teams, and then some people seem to like Texas Tech. But I think TCU also is in that conversation. But Kansas and UCF, those are the teams that I think could kind of come out of nowhere. And again, I wouldn't be shocked if one of them makes it into the Big 12 championship. But I do still think Texas is the team to beat in the Big 12. Let's go to the ACC now. It's Miami. So Miami is a team that it's kind of similar to Texas A&M. They have a lot of talent on this roster. Tyler Van Dyke was not good last year, but you go back a couple of years and he was fantastic. They've got some good weapons on offense. Up front, they've continued to improve. They've got a lot of depth and a lot of talent at the line of scrimmage, both on the offensive side and the defensive side. Defense, I think, is going to be improved. They really struggled there. That was a major disappointment for them. I thought they were going to be much better. And, I was really high on Miami last year. We all know, if you've watched the channel, I was really high on this team. And it's been in the past where I've been really high on a team, but I was a year early. And then the next year is when it hits, and they wind up being really good. I think that could happen with Miami this year. Now, I didn't pick them to go to the ACC championship or anything, but I think the potential is there. I really do. And I think the Canes could surprise some people this year and really bounce back from where they were last year. And then Louisville's another team here. We've talked about the schedule. They have a very favorable schedule, and they've got a lot of talent on this roster. Jeff Brom did a really nice job using the transfer portal. They've loaded up. I mean, both sides of the ball. This is a really talented team. I think they're probably fourth or fifth in terms of talent in the ACC. And again, with a schedule that sets up really, really well for them, they could pull a TCU. Maybe not to that extent. I don't think they're going to make the college football playoff, but maybe make a run to the ACC championship if Clemson or Florida State winds up, losing a couple of games. So watch out for Louisville and Miami, two sleeper teams in the ACC. And we'll go to the Pac-12 now. Washington State. Washington State is a team, when you really look into their roster, this is going to be a good team. Cam Ward is back at quarterback. Really electrifying player, and he played really well at times for them last year. They've got weapons around him. Defense should be pretty strong. The problem with the Pac-12 is those teams at the top. And I don't know if Washington State can break through those teams, but I'm telling you, this team is going to be, at least I think, more competitive than people are giving them credit for. And then I think Arizona State is another sleeper team. I think a lot of people just expected them to go 3-9 or 4-8, but it wouldn't shock me if they made it to a bowl game. They have a ton of weapons on offense, and they did a nice job in the transfer portal. I think this is going to be a sneaky – this is going to be an offense that's one of the better offenses in the country. I think the defense could hold them back, but they're definitely a sleeper team to get to a bowl game and have a better season than people are giving them, expecting. And I did cheat in the Pac-12. I picked one more team. So I got 3 out of the Pac-12, and that's Cal. And I've talked about them just because of the returning production, the experience that they have. I know they struggled last year, but I think they're going to bounce back and possibly get to a bowl game. So for Arizona State and Cal, it wouldn't surprise me if those teams made it to a bowl game. I don't think I picked either one of them to get to a bowl game. So again, I'm not saying that these teams are going to do it, but these are the teams that I think have potential to surprise this year. And these are my sleeper teams for 2023. Who are your sleeper teams? Who do you think is going to be better than everyone's expecting? Let me know down in the comments below.